Welcome to Testable Faith. I'm Ken Samples. Today I'm joined by scholar, community member, and visiting scholar Joseph Bergeron, MD. Joe, welcome to our program.
Good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
I want to ask you a question. Lots of people are interested in the possibility of miracles. When you open the Gospels, Jesus is a miracle worker right from the get-go, healing various people. You're a doctor, you're tough-minded, you look at evidence, you're asked questions medically and legally. Have you ever seen what you would describe as a legitimate miracle?
Yes, and I'm kind of a hard case. I'm hard to convince.
Yeah, I know that.
So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and prayer for the sick is probably the most common form of alternative medicine. Mm. What mother doesn't pray for their sick child?
Right.
Right. But when we're talking about miracles and things that are extraordinary, that are of biblical proportions, those kinds of things are not common, but we should expect to see them because Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, in Hebrews 13:8. When I was a young person in my early 20s, I had the privilege and honor to know a lady named Betty Baxter. Some listeners may remember her. Because she was quite famous in the 70s and 80s, and really from the 1940s onward, she had a very miraculous sort of healing. And so I'd like to talk about her illness.
Yes.
Because then that sets the stage to understand just how dramatic it was. Probably people say, and I think it's reasonable to say, perhaps the most dramatic healing miracle of the 20th century.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
So she was born with congenital scoliosis. People know scoliosis is a curvature of the spine. Doctors told her that her bones were matted together and what that would look like. And in her time, in the 1930s, their diagnostic technology would be X-ray. And with scoliosis, the bones sometimes do not fully separate from each other, the spine bones.
Okay.
So that's what we call segmentation failure of the vertebra. And so you can understand if the bones, if the spine is bones set upon each other with discs in between. Well, if they're not separated or they're partially not separated, when a child reaches a growth spurt, it's going to exaggerate the curvature like an accordion.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what happened to her as she entered her adolescent growth spurt. Her spinal curvature became very exaggerated. Cardiac problems are common among children with congenital scoliosis, up to 54%. Mm. Most of them are septal defects. That means the chambers of the heart did not adequately close off in development. And so she had heart disease. She had an enlarged heart, she said, twice its normal size, and that's called a dilated cardiomyopathy. And so she lived in heart failure as she started to progress in her teen years, couldn't take a deep breath without pain. She had, at age 11, she experienced rheumatic fever, and she had Sydenham's chorea, what used to be called St. Vitus dance, which is a neurologic complication of rheumatic fever that causes choreiform movements, which would be kind of exaggerated movements like that are not controlled. People generally kind of get past that after a few months, but it can affect the heart. So it's possible that aggravated and worsened her heart disease. She had kidney stones. Kidney stones in a pediatric population are pretty rare, but urinary outflow obstruction problems are common in congenital scoliosis, up to 18%. And so that's probably what caused her to develop kidney stones. Now, so I'm talking about all these things, but I don't want to miss the fact that she suffered horrific pain from these problems.
Right.
And to the point that doctors gave her morphine, but anybody that knows about opioid medications understands that the body develops tolerance to it fairly quickly, and the medications were largely ineffective and discontinued. So there she is suffering a progressive skeletal deformity as she's aging with nothing for pain.
Wow.
With congenital scoliosis, there are spinal cord abnormalities that can occur with that. 3 in particular. One is called a tethered cord, where the spinal cord is attached, stuck to the lower spinal bones. So as the child is developing, the spinal cord is being pulled. And sometimes that can cause what's called a Chiari malformation, where the brain can start to herniate through the skull into the spinal canal. Another problem that can occur is that a cyst can develop in the spinal cord. That's called syringomyelia. And in those days, they didn't have MRI machines, so these would be clinical diagnoses in that time. Their primary imaging technology was, X-ray, or myelograms, different things like that. But it would be X-ray-based sort of technology. But as she progressed into her teens and developed into her teen years, she was clearly developing spinal cord abnormalities. Her arms became paralyzed. She could wiggle her fingers a little bit, but she had no movement of her arms. She couldn't walk. If she tried to take a step, she would fall. She also had clubbed feet, which is something that can occur with congenital scoliosis. She had other things that would not be specifically related to that. She had gastroparesis. She couldn't eat solid food. So she lived on milk and fruit juice and intravenous fluids. She describes a period of time, or a couple periods of time, where she became deafblind and couldn't move her tongue. So that would be something that would not be related to the scoliosis. It would be more consistent with like a viral encephalitis. And those things passed, but the spinal deformities and the paralysis and all those things became worse over time. So by the time she's in her teen years, she spent 5 years of her life only in her bedroom, only being able to see her parents and the doctor.
Wow.
Couldn't leave the house, couldn't ride in the car because bumps at riding in the car caused so much pain.
Yeah.
She was twisted with severe scoliosis. Her head was twisted to the left and resting on her knees. Couldn't wear clothes. She was dying.
Yeah.
She had 2 near-death experiences as an adolescent. So you can understand the severity and the gravity. Now, she lived in Fairmont, Minnesota. In those days, in the late 30s and early 40s, that was a small town, 7,000 people. Yeah. Everybody in town knew the Baxter girl was dying.
Wow. And
people came to pay their respects. Now, from a spiritual standpoint, she asked her pastor, 2 pastors, if God could heal her. They said, no, the age of miracles is past.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine? No doctor said they could help her. Doctors told her father, take her home and keep her comfortable. There's nothing. Don't take her to another doctor. There's nothing we can do. Oh. Pastors say, no, God doesn't heal people anymore. What? How, can you imagine the hopelessness?
Yeah.
So her mother found Mark 9:23 in the Bible. All things are possible to the person that believes, to the one that believes. And the 2 of them together, and Betty's 4-year-old brother, believed that God was going to heal her and that Jesus would come to heal her. That she had a very intimate relationship with Jesus Christ in the sense that he would come and speak with her audibly, frequently, not after her healing, but before. And so she would pray and had that level of relationship. And then he finally told her that I'm going to come and heal you on August 24th of 1941. So she's not healed yet. She and her mother believe that. They start telling everyone. Mother goes out and buys a dress and hangs it out. She couldn't wear clothes. She couldn't wear a shoe. Mother goes out and buys shoes, buys a dress, hangs it on the wall, and Betty looks at it every day. She's telling everybody, I'm going to be healed. Tells her pastor. Pastor says, well, let me know if it happens. But please don't be disappointed. So no one, her father thought she and her mother had gone crazy. So imagine this kind of bulldog faith that she and her mother had. And they just wouldn't renege.
Wouldn't let go.
Wouldn't let go. And to make the story short, on August 24th, 1941, Jesus told her he was going to come at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 o'clock came, and there was like a whirlwind sweeping through the house. The curtains were swaying, a door slammed, and it was calm outside, but there's wind in the house, and a cloud forms. And she's sitting there paralyzed with her head twisted to the left, and she sees the cloud form, and Jesus steps out of the cloud. And she said that she could feel hands pushing her heart and forming it into its right anatomical structure, and then she could take a deep breath without pain. And she felt her organs shift around and become normal. And then Jesus touched her back, and she said it was like electricity shooting through her body, and her bones popped and cracked and straightened out, and she leaped out of the chair in front of everybody. And then she went and picked up the chair and held it over her head. Said, "See what my God can do."
Wow.
And after I republished her story with the permission and help of the family, her nephew emailed me and said, the family says when they talk about that, how heavy those dining room chairs were. So
great.
It was a big deal to them. But can you imagine going to being isolated in one room for 5 years, can't go to church, can't go anywhere, to the doctor, that's it. You're housebound and you're dying, you're having near-death experiences, everybody knows, they're coming to pay their last respects, and all of a sudden she's well and giving her testimony that Sunday night. And then immediately she started preaching every night and rapidly was preaching to large crowds, and they had to hire a teacher to travel with them to try to get her caught. Couldn't attend school since 5th grade, so they're trying to catch her up. And then, even still as a young person, she traveled with Oral Roberts for 11 years when Oral Roberts had the tent, and spoke every Sunday night when he was having a campaign meeting. And so she spoke to over 10,000 people each time. And then, so over the course of 50, 60 years, she spoken to millions of people face to face. Now, I knew her in the 1980s. She would preach in this country for 6 months, and then she would go be headquartered in Singapore and just travel around and tell her testimony, paying her own way.
Wow, boy.
So she was very, very well known, very famous. Ultimately, she passed away in 2012 at the age of 86.
Oh, my. Now, you've written a book about her life, about the miracle.
Yeah, I would like to say that it's not my book. I compiled everything I could find, transcribed sermons, got things from her daughter, everything I could find, and I pieced them together in what is the largest or most complete story, but I was very careful to leave everything in her own words precisely.
Okay. What's the title of that book?
Betty Baxter's Miracle, the Day Jesus Healed a Crippled Girl.
Wow. Okay. Now, I think you've also made a website.
Yes, I made a website for her. See, the thing is, I knew her. She was very kind to me, and she was very encouraging, and I was, I was not the best candidate for success. No one would have. I don't know why she took an interest in me, but I was in those days preaching, and she was trying to encourage me, and it was just an honor to know her, and she was just a very humble and unassuming person. But she was very encouraging, and when it seemed like her story was going to be lost to time, I said, well, I'm not going to let that happen. I want to bring it back into print. And so I made the book, the website, BettyBaxter'sMiracle.com. People can go there. They can hear some old recordings, the links to the videos, and there's other things there too.
Wow. Joe, thank you for being with us. If you'd like to know more about Joe Bergeron, go on reasons.org and type in his name. There's lots of information available.